When you read the Bible, you have a choice. You can read it through your own lens, your assumptions, your tradition, your timeline, or you can step into the experience of those who wrote it, their language, their imagery, their world. And when it comes to biblical prophecy, the choice you make makes all the difference in how you understand what's actually going on. In the last video, we walked through Matthew 24 and saw that Jesus told his disciples exactly when the events would happen, within their generation. Today we're going to go deeper because the question people always ask is, well, what about the cosmic signs, the sun going dark, the moon going out, the stars falling from heaven? So let's talk about it. Matthew 24:29 through 30. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all of the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Matthew 24:34. Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. So how do we make sense of all this? Before we can understand Matthew 24, I want to give you a tool. The single most important skill for reading the Bible and biblical prophecy in particular is this: let Scripture define its own language. When a word or theme appears in the New Testament, we want to find it in the Old Testament first. See how the biblical authors used it. See what it meant to the people who first heard it. And then you'll know what it truly means. And that skill is most critical when we talk about cosmic and apocalyptic language. The sun, the moon, the stars, the clouds, the darkness, all of that is rooted in the Old Testament. And they carry a specific meaning, a meaning we can't see unless we go back and let the text show us. And when we're done, you're going to read these words and never hear them the same way again. But first, I want to set the stage. John 5:19. The Son can do nothing of himself but what he sees the Father do. For whatever he does, the Son also does in like manner. So everything Jesus does mirrors the Father, including his coming in glory. Matthew 16:27 through 28. For the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and he will reward each according to his works. Assuredly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So there are two things here. First, he says that he will come in the glory of his Father. So this isn't a new concept. The Father came in glory throughout the Old Testament, on nations, on empires, on his own people. That's the glory that Jesus is pointing to. And second, Jesus says that there's some standing here who will not taste death. That's another time indicator, and it's right in line with the promise that he makes that all of these things are going to happen in that generation. So again, Jesus isn't being vague about his timing. He's being crystal clear. So the question we need to answer is, where have we seen this cosmic language before, and what did it mean? The pattern starts on the very first pages of Scripture, Genesis 37:9 through 10. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, look, I have dreamed another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me. So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? So Joseph dreams about the sun, the moon, and the stars bowing to him. And if you notice, Jacob doesn't look up at the sky and try to figure out how a star can kneel. He immediately understands that the celestial bodies in Joseph's dream represent people. They represent nations and powers. And we still do this today. We use symbols to represent people and power. Look at the flags of the nations around the world. Many of them are covered in stars, suns, and moons. These are all metaphors. They're symbols of earthly authority. And that's exactly how Scripture uses them too, from the very beginning. And that's the lens that we need to carry forward. Now, Psalm 18 is my favorite example in the entire Bible for this. And I want to take it slow because this passage was a massive turning point in my understanding. The introduction right in the text tells us that this is David's song on the day that the Lord delivered him from his enemies and from the hand of Saul. And if you know the story of David from 1 Samuel, Saul is constantly hunting him. David's a fugitive. He's living in caves. He's always on the run. And he's fighting these real battles against real enemies. That's the narrative. But now listen to how David describes those same events in his psalm. Psalm 18, 7 through 15. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations of the hills also quaked and were shaken, because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils, and devouring fire from his mouth. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also, and came down with darkness under his feet. And he rode upon a cherub and flew. He flew upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place. His canopy around him was dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. From the brightness before him, his thick clouds passed, with hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord thundered from heaven, and the Most High uttered his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. He sent out his arrows and scattered the foe, lightnings in abundance, and he vanquished them. Then the channels of the sea were seen. The foundations of the world were uncovered at your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils. Do you remember reading anything in 1 Samuel about God riding a flying creature to intervene against Saul? About the ocean floor cracking open, or God reaching into a quiver and shooting lightning arrows across the sky? No, and I don't either, because that's not what happened. In the narrative, Saul fell on his own sword. David's victories came through armies and men and military strategy. But when David writes his psalm, when he looks back at those exact same events, he describes them in full cosmic apocalyptic terms. The cosmic imagery isn't describing some separate event. And when you understand that, it completely reshapes how you hear Jesus' words in Matthew 24. And this isn't just David. The pattern runs through all of the prophets. As we go through these, keep track of two things: the language being used and the historical event that it actually describes. In the judgment of Nineveh, Nahum 1, 3, and 5, the Lord has his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust of his feet. The mountains quake before him, the hills melt, and the earth heaves at his presence. Nineveh, which was the capital city of Assyria, was one of the most powerful cities in the ancient world. It fell to Babylon and the Medes in 612 BC. So that's the history. But the mountains quaking and the clouds as the dust of God's feet, that's the prophetic lens. That's the apocalyptic language. Now Egypt being judged. Ezekiel 32:7, when I put out your light, I will cover the heavens and make its stars dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give her light. So here, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, campaigned against Egypt. And this was around 568 BC. It was a military invasion, but through the prophetic eyes of Ezekiel, it was a total cosmic blackout. The sun covered, the stars dark, the moon not giving light. And then we have judgment on Babylon. Isaiah 13:10. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be darkened in its going forth, and the moon will not cause its light to shine. In 539 BC, Cyrus the Great of Persia walked through the gates of Babylon and took the city. But the apocalyptic prophecy describes it as the lights going out on a superpower. These aren't isolated cases. Edom in Isaiah 34 says, the heavens shall be rolled up like a scroll. Egypt again in Isaiah 19, the Lord rides on a swift cloud. It's everywhere in the Old Testament once you start looking. And when this language is used, it's always about judgment on a nation. The physical universe keeps going. It's the world order that ends. So now let's put this all together. Matthew 24:29. Jesus says, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. That sounds familiar, right? This is the exact language that the prophets used every single time God brought judgment on a nation. And Jesus is using this same judgment language for Jerusalem. Same event, two completely different lenses. The outsider sees armies, the prophet sees God. And in 70 AD, Josephus, a Jewish historian who was actually there, recorded the destruction of the temple, the famine inside the walls, and the slaughter. And Tacitus, a Roman historian, recorded it as a military campaign of Vespasian and Titus. But Jesus, 40 years earlier, had already described it as the Son of Man coming on clouds, the sun darkened, the stars falling. Again, same event, two lenses. The outsider sees armies, But Jesus saw judgment on a nation, just like Nineveh, just like Egypt, just like Babylon. But this time the judgment was also vindication. It was proof that the one that they condemned and crucified had been enthroned at the right hand of God, exactly as he said he would be. And he didn't just say it in private to his disciples, he said it to the high priest's face. Jesus was on trial before the Sanhedrin, and the high priest stands and demands, "Tell us if you're the Christ, the Son of God." And Jesus responds, Matthew 26, verse 64, "It is as you said. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven." So he says, hereafter you will see. You, the high priest, you who hold authority over the people, you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds. And see what happens next. Matthew 26, 65. Then the high priest tore his clothes, saying, "He has spoken blasphemy." He tears his robes. Why? Because he knew exactly what Jesus was quoting. Daniel 7, verse 13. "I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him." Notice the direction. The Son of Man doesn't come from heaven to earth. He comes to the Ancient of Days. He comes to God as God to receive dominion and glory and a kingdom. This is vindication language. It's enthronement language. Jesus, standing in chains before the high priest, looks at him and says, "You're going to watch me vindicated by God as God." The high priest understood this claim perfectly. That's why he tore his robe. And within 40 years, within that generation, Jerusalem fell. The temple was destroyed. When Jesus said the sun will be darkened, his audience heard what every prophet before him had said when empires fell. And when he said it would happen within this generation, they understood that too. And Jesus wasn't the last to use this language. The apostles picked it up from him and applied it to the same judgment on Jerusalem. And we see that most clearly in the book of Revelation, which is essentially an expanded and intensified version of Matthew 24. I'll cover Revelation in a future episode, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. So, application. The Bible was written to specific people in a specific moment in history. It was written for us so that we could learn from it, but again, it was written to them. And once you understand that distinction, it changes how you approach the text. It means that you can't read it through your tradition first and then the text second. You have to let scripture speak in its own language to its original audience on its own terms before you ask what it means for you. And I know that process is uncomfortable because most of us aren't taught to come at the Bible that way. When you see something different and start questioning, say, a doctrine, you're not questioning just an idea, you're questioning the tradition you were handed, the people who shaped you, and even your own understanding of things that you thought were settled. But here's what I had to learn. Being faithful to what the text actually says is more important than remaining faithful to a tradition we inherited. And I don't see that as betrayal. I see that as doing what we're supposed to do. Going to the word ourselves, studying to show ourselves approved. And when I did that, when I let the text speak for itself, here's what I found. The language of Matthew 24 is the language of covenant judgment. Again, it's the same language used for Nineveh and Egypt and Edom and Babylon. It's the same language that David used in his own lifetime. It shows you a God who has always acted in history, a God who has always kept his word, who has never missed a deadline. So here's some homework for you. Go read Acts chapter 2. Peter stands up at Pentecost and quotes the prophet Joel. Pay close attention to the cosmic language that Peter uses, the sun turning to darkness, the moon to blood. And now ask yourself, does Peter talk about this as something far off in the future, or does he say something different? And then go back and read Joel chapter 2, the passage Peter is quoting from. Look at the apocalyptic language. It's the same kind of language we've been tracing throughout this video. And ask yourself, when does Joel say all this happens? And what does Peter do with that? And I'll give you a hint. Pay close attention to the tense. Peter doesn't talk about Joel's prophecy the way most people assume he does. Really meditate on both passages, then come back and drop a comment and tell me what you see. Read the word, study the word, memorize the word, internalize the word, because that's how we learn to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. Thanks for watching.